So I have my ball of clay here. I'm just going to smash it down. Now normally in the class we would throw it down on our table, but I don't know what your workspace is like because we want to roll out a slab. And I have noticed I have newspaper so my clay doesn't stick to my surface. And I have 2 pieces of cardboard because my piece is very small, so my clay is going to be rolled out to this thickness. It can go a little bit thicker, but not much thicker. So first, by throwing it down, it kind of makes it flat like a pancake. Now, now I want to take my rolling pin and some newspaper because I don't want my clay to stick to my rolling pin. Put some newspaper on top and I'm going to roll it out with these cardboard pieces here. Just because I want to make sure that my clay does not get thinner than those cardboard pieces. Now I rolled this a couple times. The newspaper underneath is getting kind of damp, so you might want to change that out if it starts to stick to the clay. But now you can see by rolling it between these 2 pieces of cardboard, the thickness of my cardboard will be consistent with the thickness of my clay. And this is pretty perfect for a small slab sculpture. If your sculpture is bigger, you want to go a little bit thicker, maybe double the cardboard when you roll it. Maybe just put 2 pieces on each side. Now that my clay is rolled out, I'm going to take my template and where my tape is, I'm just going to cut that tape, or you can rip it off. And I know that I want my clay to be at least this length. It's better to maybe roll or cut the slab of clay a little bit longer than what you need. This is just about right. So using your plastic knife, I know I can wash this butter knife, so I'm going to go ahead and cut this as best as I can. This is my stencil, and before I pick this up, I'm going to trace over this with a pencil. Now this pencil is terrible, so I'm going to just kind of glide it, and I'm going to trace over my design, adding some pressure in there so when I lift this up, you can see it's making an indentation. Now you could just freehand draw it on there. I'm just showing you this in case you want to print a design out from the computer. If you're doing words, maybe find a font on the font. Some of you were doing initials, letters. I would highly recommend printing out a large letter from the computer so that your letter form is very neat. So that gives me my indentation. Now, while the clay is still soft, actually I still have my extra piece here that I'm going to need to cut out my base. Now notice how perfect this circle is because I traced something, let's say maybe this. I could even use this as a stamp because I think this is, well, it's a little bit bigger. So I'm going to use this. But maybe find something, perfect. Maybe find something that you can use as almost like a cookie cutter. I always find it's better to make the base too big than too small. So I'm using this and I'm pressing this cup into the clay. And now I have a perfect circle. Just be careful to peel that out. So now I have my base. And I have my side. While the clay is still soft, because my design is nice and big, I can go ahead in there and cut away. If you have an X-Acto knife, that would be ideal. I might have to go in and get my skewer if the details are too small. And I'll show that actually on one of the other demos I'm going to do. But if you have a large letter, like I saw some of you do, just use whatever tool that you have that you're comfortable with. And go ahead and remove that. Now the one thing you want to make sure is that your design is not too close to the top or bottom or to any of the sides because that's going to make that area really weak when you construct it. But this is day 1. You want to let this clay sit. Either let it sit out for maybe an hour or wrap it up, but don't wrap it up super tight. We want this to be leather hard before we roll it tomorrow. This is to show you, just a reminder, make sure you put newspaper under your slab so it doesn't stick to your wood board. If your wood board doesn't fit because maybe you have a really long slab, maybe just put it on some cardboard that you have at home. Now I'm getting ready to do my other slab, and that's how I set it up before I cut it. So after I outline and cut it out, I think it's easier to cut the negative space out while the clay is flat and still soft. If you don't get to that today, then keep this wrap nice and tight. Another thing, notice I put indentions where I'm going to fold it because this is going to be a box and not a cylinder. If I didn't put that here, I'm going to go ahead and do that now just to show you. Just an indent. so I know where to fold it. Also, when storing this, I can just put a clean piece of newspaper dry on top and layer my roof on top of that. That's just saving space, and then wrap this in plastic. So on the baseball cap, it's a lot different because every piece is separate. But to make my design of the Steelers logo, I'm taking the cap off of this bottle and just making an impression. I'm not going to die cut it. I'm just going to make that perfect circle impression. And then I also went ahead and used my skewer to draw my design. I'm going to wait till the clay dries, not dries, but hardens a little bit before removing it, just because this is so soft. It's just going to make a bunch of holes and you won't see that star design. So a lot of demo videos will show you every side, every panel separate, like if you were to do a box. I just find it easier to make one long strip, except in this situation where I'm building a dome. For my cheese wedge, I could do it as all separate panels like I did the hat, but I like to keep it all somewhat intact, and I'm just going to cut around this. So I literally just spent a half an hour looking through all my baking stuff because I'm looking for things to cut out the circles. And I found cookie cutters that you could also use because you can wash these pretty easily for your shape and your design. I have all these pastry tips from icing, and this is actually the cap to just some spray bottle. So what I can do is push that through to make my perfect circles. This is actually a really baby small cookie cutter. So what I'm doing right now is I'm just cutting the circles out for my cheese wedge. Again, I just want to be careful not to cut too much so that my piece isn't flimsy. And for this, I can take my skewer and push that back out to save my clay. I just lucked out that I had all these different size tips, and I just need to make sure that I clean these really well before I do all my baking. I could also just use the back of a skewer and press that in there and rotate. That'll work for the little tiny holes that I want to do. This is Swiss cheese, so I'm just kind of going all over the place. And use a couple more of these. There's some. And I did trace some of these just to have an idea of placement because I didn't want it to be too patterny. So I'm just kind of having fun. I also have a chopstick here that I can push in there. Now the chopstick is actually square, so what I'll do is I'll rotate it, and that will start to turn the square into a round shape. So maybe I'll do another one of those because I'm trying to get a variety of different sizes here. Maybe I'll go to the other end here and go here. I'll change that size. I want that one to be a little bit bigger, so I'll go more off to the side. So just have fun with it. Obviously, if you get too carried away, you may want to go back. I might have to do that. Let's do this one. I think that's pretty good. One just last reminder, make sure there's dry newspaper underneath your slab and that you still want to wrap this up tightly so that it doesn't dry out. And just maybe tomorrow before class, let it sit out for about 10 minutes or 15 minutes to let it set. I'd rather it be too soft than too hard. If it's too hard, then you have to start over.